The Rise of Africa, the continent, the diaspora, and BRICS explores the relationships that are affecting the global economy right now. This book explores the relationships of the African diaspora's influence on the African continent and why this is important in stabilizing relationships with an understanding of how BRICS impacts the future, good or bad. You can order your copy of The Rise of Africa today on Amazon.com. Neo-diplomacy is the new currency. Neo-diplomacy is the new currency. The reason that I can say that is you have a couple of different factors occurring right now as we speak on the world stage. The dollar is being disrupted. Nations are no longer wanting to engage with the United States. But the third factor that affects each and every one of us is that there is a diaspora from the African continent that's willing and able to engage our brothers and sisters on the continent.
Every journey begins with a simple act of care. For Quest to Unite Africa, that journey started with something simple: a mother, a newborn, and a promise that no life would be forgotten. We did not begin with buildings, we began with people. We packed mother newborn kits with our own hands because real change starts where the need is greatest. Those kids traveled farther than we imagined, and they opened our eyes to a deeper truth. Aid saves lives, but infrastructure saves generations. So we grew. Together with donors, volunteers, and partners, we sent a medical container to Burkina Faso. Not just supplies, but hope. Not just boxes, but proof that when a community comes together, healing moves across borders. That moment changed us because we realized something powerful. We weren't just delivering help, we were building a future. Now the journey continues. The next chapter is bigger than a shipment, bigger than a campaign. We are raising funds to build a state-of-the-art hospital, a place where mothers can give birth safely, where families can find care close to home, and where communities can grow stronger for generations to come. This hospital is not just a structure, it's a promise. A promise that healthcare will no longer be temporary. A promise that dignity will have a permanent home. And just like every step before, we cannot do this alone. Every gift, every brick, every name placed on the founder path becomes part of a story that began with compassion and is growing into legacy. It helps us move from emergency aid to lasting healing, from containers to care that never leaves, from vision to reality. Join us, stand with us, help us build a hospital that will serve generations, moving healthcare into action. Visit q2ua.org today.
Okay, here we go. Shalom, salama, siyemi, shalom. Greetings to all my Israelite brothers and sisters from around the world, whether you're of the bloodline of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the house of Israel, or you're a Gentile grafted into the house under the blood of Yahusha HaMashiach. I welcome you this morning. Today is July 1st. We are now really on, I would say, the cusp of some things that some can argue unprecedented. I would say this. We're looking at the narrative beginning to shape. And remember, it took about a little over a year, about 14 to 15 months, for the birthright citizenship case to be argued in front of the Supreme Court. But I'm going to, and as I had explained about 2 weeks ago, when we were talking about Ghana and the reparations conference, the next steps, I'm going to try to provide just, this is just my opinion. These are just my thoughts based off of what we're seeing. I'm trying to give an assessment, because the reality is that that's how the world operates. They're not going to necessarily tell you, hey, here's the game plan, and we're going to follow up with this game plan, and we're going to give you the cliff notes, especially when there's things that's very, very monumental occurring, especially in your time and especially in your generation. Because the reality is that America has been able to utilize a pretty effective psychological maneuverings that has happened since 1776 and arguably before then. Before I get started, I want to say thank you to you all that have shown support for me, especially during, I would say, a moment of crises. I definitely appreciate your support. Um, and it's not easy asking for help, especially on these platforms, because I'm going to tell you the reason is, I had one of our sisters said, Brother Karras, do you know that your stuff is saying for your Karras at msn.com, it's saying scam? I'm like, that's the first I've heard of it. But I can assure you that the Zelle does work. So I definitely appreciate you all support, especially in this. This is a time it's tough. And I'll get into that a little bit, because during my struggles, I have come to realize what the Most High and how the Most High is shaping me, because this isn't about, even though I'm going through this isn't about me, because we're all going through this. There's been a clear, distinct effort to impoverish us, to cut off resources. When I tell you all, coming to the mic and putting myself on out here in the world, there's a detriment. And there's a price that's paid. Okay, Hoodoo, can you show your face, please, before I get you up on in here? Okay, thank you, Hoodoo. So here's the thing. As we come on into this discussion, let's be fair. I want to listen to everybody's viewpoints. If you're coming on up here and there's a little bit of, or I'm going to say this, if there's a lot of nonsense, um, because somebody just saw the headline today and hasn't really understand how we built up to this, I'm not going to repeat myself, especially for our audience here. I would just say there's about 2 weeks worth of live streams in the library that has shown what we are and how we have moved to particular this particular spot. But before I do want to kind of finish up this my morning monologue here. So again, thank you all for your support. Going back to the American Revolution, and yesterday I was working through some things and I just slowed down. I said, Father, you have it. Sometimes you just have to slow yourself down. And I started to look at the American Revolutionary, or the American Experiment on Netflix. And the reason I was looking at it, I didn't have an interest in it because the last time that you see on Netflix is literally our people being denigrated, especially with the Michael Jackson. I would say that's a mockumentary because the E-Class, and we're not talking Mercedes Benz, they had to show their dominance and their authority over the experiment, which is what you call America. And what a lot of people don't understand regarding the quote unquote founders, there's a lot more than obviously what was being publicized or published in Amazon, or excuse me, Netflix. so I was just looking just to kind of see what was going on because I actually wanted to find out what it is that they were actually going to lie about. I have the link on out there. You can come back on in. Let me finish up this the little monologue. Give me a few minutes. And so one of the things that and it was interesting that they were showing it that day. Yes, especially this week. And I was just watching that and I said, let me take a look. And they were stating historical facts. Now, of course, there were some omissions which they, tried to kind of gloss or clean it up with. But the reality was, at that time, the British Crown under King George III, he adopted an emancipation. And it wasn't just for the U.S. or the American colonies. It was actually for all under the British Empire. It was my understanding, at least. And that proclamation was also very targeted for those of African descent enslaved, that if they were to pick up arms and fight and support, obviously, the British Empire, that they would be free. They were free. They were no longer enslaved. And you know what that did? That created a problem. And the problem was because over 20,000 enslaved Africans said, all right. And most of your Africans or those of African descent fighting in the constitutional army were those that were up in the north that had already been, quote unquote, free. So they already had a business or some sort of enterprise of some sort where they were getting funded. So they were trying to keep up the status quo. Hey, listen, slavery doesn't affect me up here, whatever. And I kind of want you to understand that statistic because it was 5 to 9,000 Africans. At first, it was more than that at first. It was about 9,000. But when they say 5 to 9,000, I have to argue that probably towards the lower end, more so, it was more than likely 5,000, just in my opinion. And the reason I say that is because when George Washington, and this is according to Netflix, so anybody can see that this is what they had with the historians on out there. Excuse me. The reason that so the Union Army had grown and then the Union Army shrunk because you also had to remember George Washington was from Virginia and he was a slave owner. And when he saw that those of African descent were actually fighting, he actually said, I don't want them. And then in the skirmishes, they were losing. So what ended up happening was that he actually had to compromise because when George III had a decree through the British governor that all enslaved, this wasn't just in Virginia, this is all throughout the colonies, everywhere. Hey, you all are free. So let me tell you this, how Netflix glazed that on over and just kind of bypassed that and just well, America had something similar. That's what they said. America had something similar. I kid you not. And that allowed for the future African Americans to take up arms with the Continental Army. But when you understand the context, these folks were fighting, our ancestors were fighting for freedom. Hey, we're fighting because we're expecting the same deal that King George got. Wait a second. What's the problem? We should have the same thing. We should have the same. That's what you all have stated. The reality was is that in at the Treaty of Paris, they did meet reality, and they were basically told, "Nope, you're going back into your chattel captivity." You know, the crazy thing is that even though those that fought with the British, even though they lost the war, they actually won their freedom. Hey, I lost the war, but I won in the end. I'm actually free. And they went up to places like Canada and other places within the British provinces. And as you know, Canada became a ground, and it was the fomenting ground of what? Of the Civil Wars, the abolition movement. And so the Treaty of Paris that was signed in, I believe, 1783, don't quote me on that, allowed for the U.S. the cessation of hostilities, and then all those of African American, or excuse me, of African descent, because they weren't even Americans. They weren't. They were just chattel. Hey, the property goes back. Put them back on the in the fields. Put them back to their work. So I look at that because then people say, well, what does that have to do with the birthright citizenship ruling? And I say this, it's because no matter what you have on paper, no matter what is stated or what's being stated, things change. Now, I would look at it like this. That was kind of the quote unquote first volley. People said they're never going to overturn Roe versus Wade, but they did. That law, they'll. Why is that? Because it takes time. And the reason that they overturned Roe versus Wade is simply because they were the ones that were self deleting themselves. They were literally committing a genocide on themselves, thinking that that was going to target us. They were the ones that had that action of self deletion. And when they realized that their population was plummeting, and it's still plummeting, now within their agenda or Project 25 and whatever that they have, now they got to get more babies on the board per se. Now they got to get more of their people to populate. And the problem is that they're continuing to decline at a ever dramatic pace. You'll never know the actual numbers, but when you panic, you are also indicating how your numbers are. I was listening to Times of India, and it was very interesting how this his name is Galibaf. He is the parliamentary head in Iran, and how he was basically explaining to and what he was doing, he was actually explaining to the world that they're no longer going to be on the schedule of what Trump is doing, i.e., the market manipulation schedule. Hey, we're gonna bomb you on the weekend, and then we're gonna make up on on Sunday night. So Monday morning, the tweets can come out. Oh, we're having peace talks. Everything is looking good, and then everything starts to sour. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're back to bombing. But he said that. He said, listen, if you're if you're in a strong position, then guess what? You don't have to worry about trying to beg to go to talks. The same can be said with what's going on right now in the informal spaces. Can you please save this democracy? Can you please save this American experiment? And then when we tell them, look at history. History has it usually tends to always repeat itself if it's not addressed. Now, I say all that to come back to this birthright citizenship ruling. And, everybody may have their analysis, and that's fine. I understand. I always say this: everything's analysis until when it starts. We had analysis that the U.S. was about to go to war with Iran. And people were saying, no, that's not going to happen. No, that's never going to happen. Here's this. Well, here's some things. Here's biblically. I had a feeling. And then, you know, he said he had a feeling that tonight was going to be a good night. And he started bombing Iran back on February 28th. Look how those feelings occur. We were just given empirical evidence to show what was getting ready to happen. Okay, you had this, you had that, you had all these things going on in the stock market, you had a massive influx of gold. Now you have a market manipulation on gold. Yes, you do. Because why? Because as the gold was suppressed, central banks are buying it up. Oh, there was a figure. The other day they released this. They're saying, oh, the banks only bought about, $17 trillion worth of gold or something crazy like that. It was more like 200. Why would you need to lie, especially in that difference of a 12x capacity? Because these folks are scared. Oh yeah. We're not going to do this, and these banks are doing it. Why? Because they're trying to drive things down so they can buy more stuff. Market manipulation. Now folks are in here trying to survive. The ships are leaving the Strait of Hormuz. The ships aren't entering. And when they leave the Strait of Hormuz, they are paying. Nope, we can't do that because we can't have people that we don't like getting rich, being wealthy. Why? Because that's their control. If you didn't know, we get controlled the same in the same way, in the same manner. Lack of resources, control. That's been happening since we got out of quote unquote the chattel, our chattel condition. Oh, strap yourself up by the bootstrap. Can we get something? No. Because why? Because we know that you're going to be economically deprived, which is the case. And then that economic deprivation, you're going to have to do things or we'll have some unjust laws. Because again, when we came together and figured out the problem and came up with practical solutions, which is what they hate, they only want practical solutions for them. They want problems solved for them, not us. I'm just giving you historical analysis. Let me know if I'm wrong in the chat. Because if you don't help them, then they say that that is being racist or that has a racial agenda or, and you know, and then you give them history. No, I'm just trying to make sure that when you all do what you do, which is inevitable, that's what's happened. I'm not saying anything out of the ordinary. This is the same self construct that you all have. So now, as we are conversing and mentioning these things, well, you're going to get penalized. What are you going to do? I'm going to go after you. I'm going to go after your family. I'm going to go after every. Because why? You're still in captivity. But how did they do that? You know, yesterday they had a. Let me. I'm tangenting too much, but let me go here. I put this article in the chat that I'm getting ready to share. This was from New York Times. This was as of yesterday. Justices reject Trump's efforts to end birthright citizenship. President Trump tried to ban birthright citizenship for the children of undocumented immigrants and some temporary foreign visitors. Well, that to me, I'm going to say this. That to me was really never the case. So this is from an Abby Van Sickle. She pinned here. Here's the latest. The Supreme Court rejected Trump's attempt to end birthright citizenship, and the justices reaffirmed the long-held principle that nearly all children who are born on U.S. soil are American citizens. Mr. Trump's executive order had aimed to prevent babies born to undocumented immigrants and temporary foreign residents from automatically becoming American citizens. So that was what they were trying to do in terms of the 14th Amendment. While unconditional birthright citizenship is a standard across the Americas, including in Canada, Mexico, nearly all Latin America and the Caribbean, it is rare in the rest of the world. Only about 30 of the world's nearly 200 countries automatically grant citizenship to anyone born within their borders. Most countries in Europe, Asia, Middle East, and Africa use the jus sanguinis principle, meaning that citizenship passes from parent to child. It is not determined by where the baby is born. So jus sanguinis is of the blood. Some countries have conditional birthright citizenship. So what they're trying to show you, and the reason that I have this here, only about 30 of the world's nearly 200 countries automatically grant. All right. This is from a Miriam Jordan yesterday, June 30th. Because I want you to see what I'm seeing here. Only 30 of the world's nearly 200 countries. So what they're saying is that they are in a minority. You know, the US is always has to be the popular person. The popular kid, that's the popular kid. They got it all together. That's the popular kid. I'm going to tell you where the US got a real big black eye. They got a big black eye this spring or last spring. This last or back in March. You don't think that it's a crime against humanity for the transatlantic slave trade and the enslavement and all of this? You don't think that that's a crime? One of the gravest crimes against humanity. That it wasn't just it wasn't just the illegal trafficking of the people, but it was also the unjust, inhumane, immoral treatment of people of African descent. And you know what that did? That was a blemish. They couldn't take that away. I want you to see where I'm going with this. Constitutional standard versus global standard. Okay? Let me bring this out. Multipolarity. Okay? I'm trying to bring this on out to you because you're going to see the making of the beast system. Why do people accept the beast system? Why is the beast is so great? Why is the beast so great? Because here's the thing. The beast threw the whore off the back. Because why? Because the whore was unfair. The whore was corrupt. She was immoral. She needed to. That's what it is. For a civilized society, they portrayed barbaric tendencies. Exactly, Ivan Yakunan. Exactly. But how do they, and we're going to touch on that. Thank you, Ivan. We're going to touch on that because something happened yesterday. It's, oh, goodness gracious. Yes. And Brother Asa says, just sanguinis and partus births are European systems. They are European Obviously, what it shows here, Asian, Middle Eastern, and African. Now, I want you to follow me with this. Come along and follow me, please. The global system and the global order. Who takes precedence? Is it the unilateral that takes precedence or the multi? See, you live by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. You live by captivity, they're going to die by captivity. I.e., it's not going to be a death that we think, but it is going to be an economic slowdown of sorts. And when you are rejecting or reducing economic activity, things slow down. How do you reject and reduce economic activity within the United States? Well, you stop trading with them. You start having having relationships with other countries to fill those inputs. Why do you think they've admitted this? And here's the thing: I haven't said this. Rick Scott said this. Rick Scott, the Republican senator here in Florida. He said, "Yeah, the main target is China." He said it. He said it out of his mouth a couple weeks ago. Why is that? Because they know that that's the competitor. Oh, don't worry. Don't worry. There's better coffees around the world other than Starbucks. Trust me. When they start to admit their framework, their constructs, that is that's actually a failure in their eyes. That's a loss. Telling the truth is a trigger. Now you're starting to see why they are very, very anxious after what Ghana just did. Ghana, why you do me like that? That's going to be obviously the informal political talking points. Why you do us like that, Ghana? I thought we were cool. I thought we were good. I thought. See, the problem is that mind control and manipulation, that's just not limited here to the United States. It's not limited here to folks of African descent. No, no, no. That's a systemic problem. It says now Accra is flooding. People on top of their houses waiting rescue, just like during Katrina. Oh boy, didn't they tell you? They said that they have hurricane steering technologies. Well, if that's the case, then what they're telling you is that they can weather manipulate. So they've already admitted it. Pray for our people in Accra. They're admitting the technology, not me. They're admitting it. So the question of birthright citizenship, it was never really a question of if it was not or if it was going to be touched here in the United States. The argument in what they're laying out here in New York Times, these are the quotes, these are the catchwords. We're trying to be, and what's going to end up happening? Because what the U.S. has done, especially with everything going on with the economies of the world, the economies, they're not in a very good spot. They're not in a very good situation. See, we have to understand when push comes to shove, the folks that they would quote unquote scapegoat first isn't themselves, it would be us. When that happened, or when it happens, excuse me, when it happens, see, you're now starting to see. I'm going to tell you this, how crafty things are, because again, when people want come, them folks are in our business as we are doing a black transfer of wealth. Because again, they know what that actually means, what that means for them. Wait a second, if we know that we have always been economically empowered, but we didn't realize that we were economically empowered because other people would try to tell us that we're not economically empowered, then that means we need to start withholding our spending with everybody. And we need to figure out systems of how we can support ourselves and our businesses. Y'all want to talk about Amazon? We may come out with Sahara, Blue Nile, White Nile. Have you used that new service, Congo? Man, they got warehouses everywhere. You know that wouldn't happen because they would be the powers that be here would shut things down. They know that. That's the control. Well, you can't bring anything in from Africa because they would have duties and things of that nature. Do you know how much that they would probably give 100% tariffs just for no reason? Well, you know the reason. The reason again is economic control, monetary control. But now they're facing a system where their money empire, their money scheme, the fiat scheme is dying. We had said that too. The fiat scheme was dying. We talked about Kazan and Bricks Pay and M Bridge and M Clear and all these other financial tools, these alternative payment solutions. By the way, my work is published in ProQuest. If you do have access to ProQuest, it's on out there. Also, my book is on out there. The Rise of Africa, the Continent, the Diaspora, and BRICS. I had to be a little bit more nuanced with how I approach things because, again, we the idea was conflict was coming, and conflict goes into war. War is just the culmination of those conflicts. But what they are trying to lay the foundation, as I'm explaining, they'll say things without actually saying it. They're putting in the dog whistles without actually saying the quiet part out loud. Only about 30 of the world's 200 countries. Well, what's the world doing? They are now looking towards the continent. Well, see, we don't have to worry about that ruling because what we can do, we can be on the global system. The global system's talking about reparations and restorative justice and things of that nature. So we want to continue to be a great global citizen. Do you see how how they're trying to frame this? Are they going to say this right now, or they're going to utilize it right now? No, they're not. These are the talking points for when the horror falls off the beast. She's not able to ride the beast anymore. She's put in a lowly situation because why? Because she's off the high horse. Well, now that we have to be in this new system of justice and equity and all these other things that don't just apply to a certain group of people, that's the formation. That's the formulation of this beast system. We're seeing it right here, right now. They're giving you the pretext. Here's the prelude to the beast system. This thing, this thing, this thing, this thing. While they were going crazy because everybody's now on justice. Hey, I can't do business with you because why? Because you support conflicts in these places. Have you noticed that? What's been the problem with their quote unquote ceasefire? Some conflicts occurring in other places that the U.S. knows that they have control over, but they don't want to bite the hand that keeps their secret. It's not that feeds them, that keeps their secret. They're being fed left and right. Billions of dollars. Because once the secret goes out, then their moral authority continues to degrade. Their moral authority continues to erode. That's the biggest secret. Oh, you want to know how? Look, it's not that. I look at it like this, and maybe, please forgive me, y'all, because this may be very inappropriate. I remember back in the day, this is back in the late 80s, early 90s, thing, real early 90s. I was a child. And I'm going to tell you what this did. And it goes into a little, and it tells what I'm getting ready to delve into in a little bit. Every time I look at a horse, or I've ridden horses many times. Horses, donkeys, even rode a camel. Actually, a couple times. My mom would always like when the circus, oh, get on the camel. I still remember my brother and I in a little metal basket, holding on to dear life. Those are significant emotional events. Back when you're growing up, you're about 8, 9, 10 years old. You have the impressions, and those impressions are via the media, the movies, and things of that nature. Well, I remember seeing one of the biggest news stories when I was growing up, domestically, one of the biggest news stories. It was seeing Christopher Reeves, the man that played Superman, all four movies. Superman, that was it. That was his bread and butter. And then the story broke. The news came in. Christopher Reeve, the actor that played Superman, he fell off his horse. I remember this as a kid because, as a kid, we were really cruel about the jokes and everything else. Superman done broke his neck. Superman is paralyzed, quadriplegic. I remember he couldn't even talk. He had the little trachea thing going. He had to blow into the tube. He was finally able to recover enough that he was able to talk. He acted in a couple more movies. But obviously, he was as the paralyzed, the crippled, the handicapped. But what I had in that impression was, and what everybody saw, because you got to remember, one of the symbols of Superman was obviously the symbol of white supremacy. That was a symbology. And you can come on here and argue that that wasn't the case. Okay, I have the thing open. You can argue it. We can have that discussion. But that's what that was. And you have to remember, when a symbol of their national pride is gone, man, they got to sweep that thing under the rug. That thing has to go. Why do I bring up Superman? Why do I bring up the horse? Because that's what Babylon is right now. They're on their high horse. You could tell. Man, you can't tell them nothing. They have Kanye West on repeat. Kanye West can't tell me nothing, lives in their head. Oh yeah. You know what? Oh my goodness, Cindy. Cindy Lou. Let me put this on out here. And what was the symbolization of kryptonite? Come on. Well, there was a reason why it was emerald. What was the stone of Judah? You can read it, it's in the Bible. What was the stone that Judah represents or is representative of Judah? It's emerald. Look it up. It's emerald. You know, the funny thing is that when you go over to the Arab Islamic world, you can find a mosque because the mosque has a green color. Oh man, we got trolls in the building. The name says it all. You know, this it's real touchy because now they know what this opens the door for. But it was that emerald. It was all kryptonite was it, and they made sure to let people know that. You know, these things we're thinking about it now, but you have to laugh. We've always been their kryptonite. I'm going to tell you why. Thank you. Shout out to Brother Asaph for sharing this article with me. I got a chance to peruse this article, but we're gonna go into this because you have to see where this is going. Let me go back here. The choice before Europe. This is from theguardian.com. The law of the strongest or reparative justice. Oh boy. And I'm going to say, arguably, this is from Lillian Umabieye. I hope I said it right. European nations are starting to pay attention after a landmark UN resolution, but reparations is about more than symbolic remembrance or stolen artifacts. Now people are calling for things to be returned. What are things? Not just money, not just prop or items, but also people. They don't want to tell you the context because why? Because you got to ease people into that. So this is a reverse MK Ultra of sorts. Ghana conference calls for formal apology for transatlantic slave trade, and it's a lot more than that. So I guess that's the former French Justice Minister right here, French Justice Minister Christian Taubry at the Next Step Summit at on the landmark UN resolution on the trafficking of enslaved Africans held in Ghana. And so I told you it was going to take a couple of weeks for these things to reverberate. In Accra, Europe, it can no longer avoid. Oh boy. Professional movement and reparative justice has been gathering political momentum across Africa and the Caribbean, from Nairobi to Bridgetown, from Accra to Addis Ababa. So let me tell you this. They say for years the global movement. I would beg to differ, because we have literally been talking about reparations here in the United States for decades. Decades. Just let that sink in. This is now the time that they're picking that up and they're running with it, because remember, again, they were under a very strong delusion. Our family was under a very strong delusion in these other parts of the world. And we had to be patient with them. We had to pray for them. But you're telling me in 4 short years, that's all it took. But the reality is that they're at the table, because the reality is they're being cut off from their resources. Shout out to Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. Look at the difference y'all have made. Hallelujah. Look at that difference. And people say that nobody pays attention to us. They absolutely pay attention to us. What did Ibrahim Traore say? Look, part of what he did was he was hearing things from what? From black folks over in America. Uh-oh. Had it not been for you pesky Negroes, we could have continued to run our world empire. Dun, 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 dun. No gadget. We had stumbled across the way. We were looking a little crazy. But we got there. We got your attention. Hey, look at us. We're right here. Hey, we're trying to tell y'all something. Hey, ask for reparations. Y'all can do it. Listen to your family. Listen to your brother. Listen to your Huda. Come on, Ephraim, you can do it. Yeah, you're doing it, Ephraim. We doing it, baby. Yeah. Get on the team. Come on now. Cynthia say, yeah, he's preparing the table for us in the presence of our enemies. Come on now. Oh my goodness. Psalms 23. Let me get back into this article. Yet, the very European states whose wealth and global standing were built through slavery, colonial conquest, and racialized extraction remained absent. That changed 2 weeks ago. Uh-oh. What did I say? Europe is not going to be the one holding the bag. You don't get it twisted. France is not going to be the one holding the bag. They've already told you. They've already were running to China a few years ago. Oh, what are you doing? What is happening? Qu'est-ce que s'est passé? What is going on here? I need to know. Voulez-vous pouvez dire quelque chose, s'il vous plaît? Something is not right. Let me know about my affairs, how I get my affairs in order. I do not want to be broke. I need my money. I need my DVs. Oh, let me know. Hook me up with the conference in Kazan. They literally said they gave him a resounding no. They said, don't show up over here. Your presence is not wanted." That was hilarious. I do remember seeing that. That was pretty hilarious. But what did that show? They knew that they were in trouble. Then what ended up happening? Not just did they get cut off from Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, but now all of these other nations in Africa, all of a sudden, they started to say, you know what? My stuff is worth a lot more than what you're saying. Y'all can handle it. And that little bit of price fluctuation changed the game. They're making money over in Africa. Don't get it twisted. They're making money in the continent. Oh, you think you're going to have access to this gold? You think you're going to have access to this cocoa? You think you're going to have access to this produce? No. Fair market suggests that it's this, and this. And they're telling them, take it or leave it, or we sell it to China because they're paying fair market. Uh-oh. Well, we can't go anywhere else because the U.S. is throwing tariffs up there. So either I pay a lot of tariffs or I pay a little bit of the price increase. All right, bet. Okay. See, once that started, I told you all what was done did. I don't know if y'all would really understand what I was telling you, what Trump done did. All right, Shalom, hoodoo in Louisiana voodoo.
Peace. How you doing?
Okay, what is going on?
And thanks for having me up. Um, as far as the title of the show with the birthright citizenship, it's true that the 14th Amendment was specifically created for descendants of U.S. chattel slaves. That is true. But to address what you were just talking about as far as Africa, I think the neo-colonization that we see in Africa is their karma for selling their own people to Europeans, respectfully.
All right, well, I understand that, what you're saying. I just would ask, what do you think this next steps is for? If it's facilitating a return to Europe with Africa. Well, so let me just read this article because again, I want to make sure that people are understanding this. So from June 16th to 19th, this is her opinion piece. So she says, I attended an unprecedented gathering convened by the government of Ghana of representatives from 80 countries, multilateral institutions, and civil society organizations to define the next chapter of reparative justice. Following the landmark United Nations resolution of 25 March, recognizing the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement as the gravest crimes against humanity, for the first time, France, Germany, the Netherlands, and Denmark were in the room. So she says there is no doubt that the presence of these 4 European countries marked a political shift, but their ambitions fell dramatically short of the moment. So here's the reality. As I have stated this, now they're in the room. Do you think they wanted to be in the room just because, or do you think they got dragged in the room because there has been some, I would argue, economic issues that they have been having, because it looks like resource management and resource control is what Africa has been doing.
I will argue that both European nations and African nations are facing economic strains right now. But and this will be less than 5 seconds. Um, yes, European nations definitely owe descendants of transatlantic chattel slavery reparations. Additionally, African nations also owe reparations. So it's hypocritical for these same African nations to criticize the Europeans for not paying reparations, while they themselves have also not paid reparations. I was
And
just in
how would that,
Ghana.
and how would that form of payment be?
Various different forms. I would say land primarily, but also
Land
uh,
where? Land where?
in the nations that sold Africans to Europeans. So I would
And
say
then in
Benin. I'm trying to
okay,
name the nations: Benin, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Angola, etc., etc., etc.
okay, that's a fair argument, and I'll 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 give you that point. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yes, land restoration, exactly. But I would argue this: who's to say that that's not what they're building towards?
Well, I would say that even if you argue they are building towards this, because I would never deny if they actually are, they already had the opportunity to do this. They could grant all descendants of transatlantic chattel slaves citizenship in these nations right now,
They
really,
could, they could,
but they
but
have not. You know,
okay. And why do you think that they haven't?
I can only speculate, honestly.
Okay. So you understand that right now, the only reason that they haven't been able to do any of that, which you came up with some valid points, you have to remember there's still a place called the United States. Okay. And I just want you to be aware of that. Um, oh, I know. Yeah, I know. I saw the name change. I got that for the folks in the chat. But the reality is you have to understand that anytime that this has happened, I think I think people tend to forget this. Um, remember Muammar Gaddafi?
Definitely,
Yeah, and what happened to Muammar Gaddafi?
he got killed.
Yeah, exactly. So why did he get killed? Believe me.
I've heard that he got killed because he was attempting to create the dinar, which would have been a single currency for Africa.
Now that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons. He was trying to transfer over a couple $1 billion directly to African Americans.
Yes, yes, I've heard this.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's why you have to understand the political climate there and the political appetite. So now I would say this, look, we didn't have, look, could you have imagined this about maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago? That wouldn't, this wasn't even, this wouldn't have even been a topic of conversation, let alone these countries.
But, but brother, your people are worth fighting for. Africa would die an honorable death if they actually did fight for their descendants that are in the Americas and throughout the diaspora. This is an issue worth going to war over, but they have not done it.
Well, I would say this, and I'm going to ask you this. Have you ever served in the military?
No, 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 not the U.S.
Okay.
military. Definitely
o-
not.
Okay. So let me kind of tell you this. Your tactics are very, very way off base. I can tell you that. In the military, you, whenever you're fighting a war or a conflict, the point is that you want to stay alive because your conflict is actually a campaign. This is actually now a campaign because a campaign and a conflict takes many forms. Do you not think that economic warfare, what does that look like? This is economic warfare. Just because it's no bullets or anything else doesn't mean that there isn't an actual reprisal that's happening. This is happening. This is actually what brought these European nations to the table.
Well, allow me to understand your point. Are you saying that because we were speaking about reparations that Africans have not paid to the diaspora, are you saying that African nations cannot grant land and citizenship to Afro diasporans because the U.S. may retaliate? Is that what you're saying?
I'm going to say they will retaliate, especially in the state that they're at right now. And that's not a hyperbolic statement or something on out there that's wishy washy. No, that's an actual statement, and that statement is actually based on a lot of these national security memos that have been covered on these platforms. I'm just regurgitating what it is because
No,
again,
no, I hear you. I hear you. And my response to that is that that means we have to acknowledge that Africa is in a weak position right now.
I know I wouldn't say that. No, that's actually not a true statement
Well, you just
because
say
if
they're
you're
not strong enough to grant their own descendants citizenship in the nations in Africa that they descend from because the U.S. may retaliate. That means the
no,
U.S. is
that's
stronger.
not a okay. That is actually not true, and I'm going to tell you the inaccuracies of that. Just because you're in a weak, so I would say that Africa is actually in a greater position, but just because you're in a position of strength right now, there are mechanisms that you still need to utilize. Because I would say this is China weak for not just going in and having a blockade against Taiwan? It's China weak.
They are in a position of weakness that they cannot reclaim their own territory. Yes, you can make that argument, brother.
Are you sure? Because here's the thing: they can reclaim their territory anytime. They've done literally encirclement training to do that.
But they have not out of fear of retaliation from the United States. So my point is back to Africa as the
I
focal
no,
point.
I don't, I
And
don't, I don't think that. Honestly,
we'll
I
go
don't
ahead.
think that that's the case, because you have to also remember this: you're dealing with different thought processes that are there. Just because you may say, well, that's good right now, you're going to have to build that case. And it's a population that has to be built up to understand why things are happening the way that they're happening. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you this. You can then say, is Iran weak or is Iran strong?
You could also argue, and I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, and then I want to get back to Africa. You could say that Iran's ability to control the Strait of Hormuz is an indication of the strength of Iran. You can make that argument. Or in
Okay.
other words, you could argue
So
that
then, so
in this
then, why
particular
does it?
conflict, the
So then
U.S.
the
I'm trying
real.
to.
So then you're because you're coming right back into this logic trap
Uh
that,
huh.
well, if that's the case, then why doesn't Iran just go on over and invade that Eastern Mediterranean nation?
Yeah, I was trying to respond to that.
You see,
I was going to address that literally. Um, in the Strait of Hormuz conflict, you could actually argue that the U.S. is in a position of weakness because we cannot take over the Strait of Hormuz and do what we want. We cannot access it as we deem fit. So there will be strips of, pardon me, there will be positions of strength and positions of weakness. Now back to Africa. If your claim
well, no,
is
no,
that
no,
Africa,
because no,
all right,
because
go ahead. I'm listening.
that's being disingenuous. Because again, here's the thing: could the continent of Africa literally just shut off the United States? Yes, they could. Could the continent of Africa literally just shut off Europe? Yes, they could. Now, what that would actually do is that would create more enemies than friends. And everything that we do, we have to be smart about how we do things. That's diplomacy. So as you see, just because you may be in a position of strength doesn't mean that you embolden yourself to then act upon it. You are literally showing what, and we're seeing this happen firsthand
So just so I'm clear,
with
and
this administration. That's
and you
literally
see,
the test case.
I'm really trying to have a peaceful dialogue with you. So just so I'm clear, Africa has the strength to grant all Afro diasporans land and citizen reparations within these African nations, but they are choosing not to. Correct? Just
I
so I'm
didn't
clear.
say that. I didn't say that. See, so
But
now
they
you're
haven't
being
done it though,
disingenuous.
brother. No, that's why I
Okay.
asked you. I'm not putting that position on you.
Uh,
I'm asking.
did I say that they're choosing not to?
Yes,
Here's
brother. You
here's
said.
here's the thing.
All
Here's the
right, go ahead.
thing. No, they're not. No, they're not choosing not to. Here's what they're trying to do. They're trying to navigate a geopolitical quagmire because of a nation that has historically done wrong to the peoples and the descendants of Africans, and particularly here in the United States. Do you not understand? But I'm we're done with this. And I say this is because um, we have to understand. We have to be smart. And I know he tries. He trolls on over. So he had a different name because I kicked him on out and I'll ban him again. But I was going to be fair, and I I was fair. Matter of fact, these nations, and let me explain how this works. These nations are the governmental bodies that represent the territory that was artificially designed through the Berlin Conference.
Thank you.
Okay? So that's the recognized international body. Within those nations, you also have different tribal chiefs of thousands. So, no, they cannot just grant you land. They actually have to coordinate with those tribal chiefs. That's the coordination that's happening right now. It's the same thing. Hey, can the United States just, I mean, they could arbitrarily just up and take Indian land, Native American land. Here you go. They could do that. But if you are trying to be respectful of the people that are there has to be a conversation. Because we're trying to reintroduce ourselves. Because now all of a sudden, quick, fast, and in a hurry, folks are now realizing that they're trying to kick us on out. They're showing us more and more that they're working out whatever mechanisms that they can to have us economically degraded, not just economics, but politically, socially, emotionally, financially, physically, you name it. Every agenda is on out there. It's no longer, oh, well, it's I think that's conspiracy theory. Okay, they just did the redistricting thing. Tell me what that conspiracy theory is all about. They can't say that anymore. So all of a sudden, this was literally less than a year. Now, Black, look, it's not we're changing our tune. It's in less than a year, we're seeing everything that were some strong held beliefs. Oh, well, this is America, and they're going to do this and they're going to do right by us. And I have to explain that to people. Show me historically how that has happened and when that's happened. And they get mad because historically they can't give you anything. There are promises, right? There are things that there are said but never carried out. So this is what we have right now that we're working towards. And yes, there's work done behind the scenes. Do you think that work's going to be said? I was telling people, they're doing things behind the scenes. They're working behind the scenes. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Yeah, they're going to just publish that. Get out of here. So, again, I was being fair. And we go from there. And I'm going to tell you this. I saw where this discussion was going because I've had him on the channel many a times. And if you are just new to being here, he's been on a couple of our platforms. Yeah, Garth. Fair to your own detriment. Exactly. Shalom, Minister Rick.
You should have kept him on. I wanted my chance. Yes, we have to understand. You get people on here with agendas, and you could call them trolls. I'm not a name calling person, but the fact of the matter, if you look at his views on his face, and you touched on it, that was the final thing. The entities he's talking about are Berlin Conference nations. See, no African drew these lines of these nations here, these entities here. They didn't set those things up at all. So the people responsible for the nations he named, Nigeria and all that, are the nations in Europe that drew those lines and set up those entities under the Berlin Conference. And this whole trope that the Africans haven't done anything and they haven't advanced beyond anything, and they should have fought, they should have done, and they should have fought. Well, how does that work out? We had a slave nation in our own hemisphere that fought valiantly, won, and were marginalized for 200 years, Haiti.
Mm-hmm. And what was always, come on now, because that was exactly what I was going to say, because Cammy Neva says, a lot of the African nations have repented and apologized for their actions for the slave trade. And that was exactly what I was getting ready to allude to, Minister Rick. Any nation, let's put on our thinking caps. Any nation that, especially right now, and that's what I say, it's gonna be a process, right? Because here's the thing. The US, they are degrading themselves. And that degradation is actually being carried on out with these many, this warfare. They're trying to go after Cuba, right? Cuba's next. Well, what about Iran? Stick a pin in it.
Yeah. And the situation is this. The slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, was not merely human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
The slave trade was an invasion.
Yeah.
They were invaded at this time.
Mm-hmm.
and are just dealing with that. Now, we can go to any number of nations. Well, why didn't China stand up when the British and United States came in there and forced drugs in there and came over and took over their country? Why did they, why did they? It took them, they call it the 100 years of shame.
Shame, yep. Come
It
on
took them a
now.
long time to be able to stand up.
Yes.
So you have to build that. You have to sovereignty. And why? And Iran, all these countries. And why didn't the African Americans or blacks or FBAs, why didn't they rise up and in Reconstruction? Because we had an army, we had militias, we had weapons. Why did we allow them to take over and put us into Jim Crow and lynch us and do those things when we were in a better position? The largest, totally other than few officers, the largest military force ever of African American soldiers was in the Civil War. I'm trying to remember the 20, and they had this group. We had infantry, cavalry, and artillery. In fact, after the Civil War, that group was taken into Mexico to put down what the French were trying to do and fight in that war. That Cinco de Mayo. After the Civil War, African American troops, black troops, were taken into Mexico to put that down to stabilize. See, they don't write that in the history. So I mean, to point your finger at what other people didn't do, and you're not pointing to what we didn't do and what we continue to not do with this with the Boule class. Why didn't we do more? Well, we're not dealing with that. Was yesterday. This is now. And I know you wouldn't even bring up the spiritual points of we were on the Most High's timeline, and we weren't going to get past that. But again, I'll tell you one thing in the scriptures. The Bible says that those who bind themselves to Babylon will perish by the sword. So him and his ilk, if they want to come up here and fight for this piece of non-sovereignty, powerless, stateless situation we in here, if he wants to live in the POW camp and tout himself as being strong, when you really look at it, all we did in our liberation in this country, we went from field Negro status to house Negro status, if you look at it, because we don't have to work the fields anymore. But we got a little better. We got a better position in the house, but you're a house Negro, you still don't control anything. You still don't do anything. And the only thing you can do is rise up and appeal to the morality of the people that put you in there to do something. And again, it's like you're in battered race syndrome. This is what we are in battered race syndrome. What happens in correlate to battered wife syndrome. What happens to a battered wife? Well, a battered wife gets beaten up. She's going to pull away and things like that. And the husband says, "Oh, no, I didn't really need that. I really helped you. Come on back home, honey, and we'll get it together." Then beats her again, and he goes out and do like that. And that's what we got. We got two political parties: the good cop and the bad cop. The bad cop presumably does all. Look at this. Look what they did. You do. Come on back to the Democrats. The Democrats come in there. They're both trying to put you in prison. So to say our situation, when our situation becomes untenable, we're going to need some place to go to, and a situation to go to, and that those in Africa are making the political, legal arguments, setting up their land and building the infrastructure. They have to get the resources back to build the infrastructure to receive us. So there should be a lot of QTUAs trying to help them get through that situation. Talking about give us land, undeveloped land that you can't even live on. It's, again, this idiocy. I still would have liked to talk to them, but it's okay. You have to cut those conversations off. It's more important that the people who do listen to this network and those who troll it understand that the situation, our situation here is untenable. Whatever progress we think we have made in this 250 years. In fact, why do you have to vote every few years on a voting rights? We're citizens, we're FBAs. Why isn't our voting rights, why aren't our voting rights baked into the constitutions and into the states? And you have to fight every year. Or we have to get our vote. Why is that? Why is that a renewal? Why is our voting rights on subscription? We got to renew it every once in a while. You're not free here. You're not powerful here. You're not strong here as an FBA. You're in an untenable position. And the only positions we have here are based on the the good grace of these YT people, or can we say the full faith and credit of the United States? Is that the hill you're going to die on when you want to expand with your people? I say you made a fool's bargain if you bound yourself to Babylon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to redress, because there's a couple of different questions on in here. So number one, I've had that on a couple of different times. He has been on via numerous names and things of that nature. And to be fair, I do let him on to state some things, but I do know when it does come to when we start to talk, because I do address things in a fair manner. I do. And then then there's I would say this, academic or scholarly, or there's dishonesty in a lot of things. And here's the thing, I'm saying that because I've had him on a couple times on this platform, and he's been on other platforms, right? So there's intellectual dishonesty on that part, but I'll entertain it until we get to that intellectual dishonesty. And yes, he is an agent provocateur, so this was his time
I
to.
believe with Garth, you're fair to a fault.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, and again, he had fair questions, but again, every single time that he's done things is, well, they do, and that's it, and we need to be buyers. It always devolves into that discussion. It always does. there's there's countless, numerous examples of that. So the reality is that, again, now that these moves are being made, right, the same straw man arguments are actually falling apart. And so
Yeah.
now all the different, well, what about this? What about that? Well, and then I explained, well, remember a couple months ago, remember a couple, like last year, this never would have happened. What, Ghana would do this? Ghana would be so bold to do this? I
The
actually believe that there's more stuff going on.
Well, see, you have
Personally,
knowledge that you can't even share with him, and
exactly.
the 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 premise that we as FBAs, blacks, African Americans, need to operate solo by ourselves does not happen. Uh, China, Russia is not operating by itself.
Mm-hmm.
It is allied with China and BRICS and other things to deal with a
Yes.
superpower and hegemony. Uh, in Africa, they are not, in the Sahel states, they're not operating by themselves to deal
Mm-hmm.
with the situation and built that. Nobody, no man is an island, and no race in one country. We're not even representing the whole diaspora. We're going to just, so
Mm-hmm.
you're just going to go solo against people organized it. And this is the thing with our people sometimes. Those folks beat up on us. It wasn't one European nations. They got together and got a deal and teamed up on Africa.
Yeah.
And now we're as a people got no land, no
Mm-hmm.
state. No, we didn't get what the Native Americans got. We haven't got a reservation to stand on. We haven't got a casino to stand on because we're playing their game. That's what I'm talking about. We're in their casino thinking we're running something because we accumulated a few chips that they're continually taking from us and changing the rules of the game. And out of that, so the Bible says, talks about envy not your uh, oppressors and
Impressive.
choose
And choose none of
none of
his
their
ways.
ways.
Mm-hmm.
We're to, for FBAs to choose the arrogance of their oppressors, the Trumpisms, this boastful thinking when you ain't got no power and a leg to stand on. Not that type of power. The power we have in this country comes from the Most High because of who we are spiritually as a people and His promises, not the promises of the Constitution of the U.S. government, the promises of the Most High to keep us together, that we would not be totally wiped out, and that this day would come. And our voice, that's where our power comes from. and that's not to stand alone. He set up alliances. The Most High has said we're not going to operate alone. That He's going to bring the two sticks together, Ephraim and Judah, the two sticks of our people together, to work together for that power, which He is doing. So, again, I guess, well, some people say the expression is everybody don't suffer fools long, and I guess my wick is kind of short in there. I'll yield to the other doctor. You guys are above my weight. I'm on the phone with two doctors, so let the other doctors speak.
Look, the only thing
We're
is,
only brothers. We're brothers.
yes, there's no designation. Listen, all that means is that I got a lot more learning to do. Okay. And that's why I said, listen, I don't claim that I know it all, but what I do is I look at what's in front of what's happening in front of us. And yes, and I do have a little bit more insight, to be fair. There's a little bit more insight that I have, versus what a lot of other people have. And that's just the position that the Most High has put me in. But I also would say this, and I also have to be very cautious because, again, for the young man that I just had on out there, he wasn't talking about anything I would say FBA related. I would say that. I think more so it was really about the frustrations, right? And we can get frustrated, right, with our brothers and our sisters over in the continent. Hey, you all have everything. You all have land. You all have all the resources, and why don't you offer it to us? That's very simple, right? It is very simple. It should be simple. The problem is that when you're starting to see how, ASAP, there's two of you. Okay. The problem is that when you have a situation going on that you're seeing, they're trying to reclaim their land, because you have to remember all of these other quote unquote leaders that the continent has had, they weren't in the best interest of the people on the continent. That's why you have issues of mining with China and other places. So you have that, and it's not just China, because you have a lot of Indians that are there too. You have a lot of other Arabs and Europeans. It's a hodgepodge. And so that's what I'm saying. It's taken them a little bit to get that together, because every nation is basically lobbying them to say, don't bring your people back. Can you imagine that?
Yep.
Don't bring them back.
Well, theologically, maybe that's our role. Biblically speaking, I mean to say, we're the big brother.
Mm-hmm.
The eldest son, Judah, has a now Reuben got cast out. He lost his status because indiscretion. So we are the big brother. Little brother is having some problems. It's time for big brother to when we get over there, then we're going to help them deal with a lot of these things. And as our role, I looked up the functions. If you just look up the functions of what the eldest son is supposed to do in the Hebrew family, and you see really keep order and divide property and do inheritance. All these functions are things that we should be doing. So we should be moving towards alliance, understanding that I was a big brother. I knew I was called on in the family structure. I might have to fight someone because somebody was messing with my younger siblings. So we will have to go over there, ally with them, and help make that situation right, instead of complaining about it from over here when our situation isn't right. We haven't, as a people, haven't been enslaved in the country. We haven't arisen to the level that Joseph did.
Mm-hmm.
So if you follow his life, we're just in the prison. Okay, hey, brother Asaph is back.
Shalom, family.
All right.
Yeah, I just came in to give you an update on what's happening over on this side. we've had a delegation that's turned up from Jamaica to speak to the Crown about reparations. And it was featured on some of the news programs running over here and one right-wing television station called G News. And in the chat, the whole British community, the Yankee Tango one, were in consternation about the idea of ex-colonists getting reparations. And I had to weigh in, and I said that it was a war, and the Hansard and pre-Hansard accounts of our people being taken according to the skills that they've been taken to. And the money that they're complaining about is not their money at all, because the money that was taken from by slavery is not covered by the law of tort. It's covered by human rights law, and it's also unlawful enrichment as well. And we're asking for compensation for that, and also the return of the bodies and heads of our kings that are held in British museums and also in universities as hostages. And quite a few of them were quite unhappy about it. Then they raised the same strawman arguments about the Barbary Coast pirates. I said to them, genetically, the Barbary Coast pirates are people from the Ottoman Empire and Europeans that integrated into one. And the other one was the Roman slavery as well. I said during Roman slavery, you weren't colonized, you weren't shipped anywhere else, and you were allowed to own property, you were allowed to have a family, and your family in most times weren't sold away from you. And then they came up with the argument of the Vikings. I said the Vikings only raided churches and took women and children. And these strawman arguments that they're making is not holding up at all, because our slavery was racialized slavery, right? We weren't considered human beings. We were even considered as food. Because, yeah, they bought us as the chattel and cattle. They don't see the linkage between it. But there was widespread cannibalization of our people because our meat was considered a delicacy in Europe.
And it's multi-generational. Those other slaveries weren't multi-generational. That's
correct. It wasn't multi-generational either. So, Minister Rick, I've seen you come up with tangents that we haven't thought about. So don't consider yourself less than. We all contribute the same amount and to the same degree to this movement happening. The reason why things are turning over so quickly is that we're all on one page. I have an English accent. Dr. Copeland has an American accent. You have an American accent. But we all come from the same place.
That's right.
The same Bantu people that they took. And it's now become a problem to them because even the Suckling is talking about it in our community, that what they did to us was unfair. And you see, the way that they've positioned themselves since they invented things, the racial hierarchy, to keep the majority of their people as a buffer between themselves and keeping their money, is that buffer's no longer there because Africa has decided that it wants its people back. And trade is now structured in a way that they can be cut out of the picture completely.
Yes.
Yeah, through the banking systems, the SIPS system, which is the Chinese version of SWIFT, and also through the BRICS system. So we don't really need to trade in either euros or their currencies. So they found themselves in a very difficult position. And you have people like yourself, Minister Rick, who are talking to people on the ground, whilst myself and Caris, Dr. Copeland, are talking to people who are influential And we can also influence people by speaking to them directly, because if Dr. Copeland says, I'm Dr. Copeland so and so, and I believe and I think that this is wrong, and your approach to this could be better, then people on the continent are more willing to listen to us because of the credentials we have behind our name. And also, in my case, not only the credentials, but the family that I'm married to as well. So we are breaking down barriers everywhere that we go. And the more that we speak about it is the more traction it gains, because we don't control the media. We don't control the newspapers. We don't control the journalists. But a lot of the articles that are coming out from African journalists in the Caribbean, the CARICOM and Africa working together, and also organizations like QTUA, even though you're not heavily represented openly as widely as these other groups, the pressure is coming from groups like that. And
Yes.
you only need to run water over a stone for a while for that stone to be worn down. And our speaking truth to power has worn them down. And they see that they're in a position now where they're being cut off, because they've seen what's happened to France. And that's one of the biggest case studies that could ever serve as an example. And they are worried now that if we go with say the Russia or China and cut them off completely, then they'll be out of the picture. What do you think this war in Ukraine is about? It's not about Ukraine per se. It's about the resources.
Yes. And they
Right?
want to bleed out Russia.
That's right.
Okay.
And the thing is, it's not possible to do that, because if Russia didn't consider them as their brothers, they could wipe them out completely with an electromagnetic pulse over the center of Kiev, and then that would just put an end to everything. Because
Russia.
if you haven't got any electricity, you roll back to the Stone Age.
We don't. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Minister.
We don't want to pay attention to history. 85% of the German army was fighting Russia. We gloriously say that the U.S. won World War II. No, we did not win World War II. Our contribution to World War II was what we don't have now, the production. That's was account of that's how. And this convoluted thing of history, when we say slavery, and I'll be very brief, slavery prior to this chattel slavery that we were involved in was a slave was a debtor, a felon, or a POW. There wasn't chattel slavery, French, that comes from French for cattle slavery, where the people you're enslaving, these other people realized they were enslaving humans. These people brought up the theory, no, we're not enslaving humans. These are animals. They have no human status. Ergo, no human rights. Ergo, everything you do to castration, everything that's done to animals, of course, there's the sexual aspect, but I guess bestiality is not any problem for these people if they consider someone a beast. So what I'm saying is, this was a unique situation that needs to be compensated under unique parameters that we have not seen. There's yes, United States and all these slave nations need to compensate the diaspora and Africa, and it will happen because it's of the Most High. They will repent or die by the hand of the Most High.
You see, this partis sequeto ventrum law, which is you inherit the status of your mum if she was a slave, or you inherit the status of a person to gain a certain nationality, right? I'm being quite diplomatic. It comes from certain apocryphal beliefs from that Middle Eastern country. And all the countries that have voted in favor of that particular ideology were just the three that support this idea. And it shows that the mindset of them hasn't changed. The ones that abstained didn't have the courage to vote no, because they can taste the coffee. And not voting no or not voting yes is an each way bet on a horse. You're waiting to see which horse is going to win.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is that we don't have to fight because the Most High is fighting for us. And the truth, according to John 8:32, is what sets you free. And we are speaking the truth. And because we are speaking the truth and saying that this is what happened to us, removing the books doesn't change anything, because we're a people that have an oral history and we talk amongst ourselves. Because whether you believe it or not, Minister Rick, when I heard you talking, I was on the road and I heard you talking about us being a woman being born into releasing the child into the matrix, and we're born into the matrix. That is some heavy, deep-seated spiritual and also intellectual rationalization. So don't put yourself down. Some heavy hitting is coming from our community.
All praise to the Most High. That's the Holy Spirit.
Yes, some heavy hitting is coming from our community. Yes. From our theologians like yourself, from our theologians like Brother Yakoba, from Sister Gates of Huldah. You know, it's all an amalgam of us coming together and realizing that we're one people now, and they don't know what to do about it. So it's a real let my people go moment happening right now. And who would have thought, as what Dr. Copeland said, that we would have come this far in just 4 years? Because I never thought in my lifetime that I would live to see this happen. I'm going to be quiet whilst this comes up on the screen that Dr. Copeland just put up.
Yeah, because one of the things I wanted to talk about, and we may have to revisit this tomorrow, because this is pretty good. Actually, well, yeah, tomorrow's going to be a little interesting because of some things I have to do. But you know, one of the things in this article it mentions, you know, in a message delivered by President Emmanuel Macron, Paris acknowledged that it had heard the UN resolution loud and clear, but they didn't. But they abstained, right? Even though they heard it loud and clear. But one of the things, again, the Netherlands and Germany largely reiterated existing commitments, particularly on the restitution of looted cultural heritage. Denmark was more cautious, still limiting its contribution to the support for the restoration. So they know what's getting ready to come. They understand, because when you see in this right here in this section, however, the global reparative justice framework adopted in Accra last week is not a call for symbolic remembrance or the return of a handful of stolen artifacts. It is a blueprint for redesigning the international order. Redesigning the international order. It links slavery and colonialism to today's racial, economic, financial, climatic, technological, and political inequalities, arguing that justice requires transforming the very institutions that continue to reproduce them. Europe, by contrast, largely offered memorialization and heritage restoration. They know that it's coming. They know that payback is coming. This is what they are afraid of. So again, when I tell you all, if this was last year, well, they had to wait. They had to wait to see how the folly that Trump created, and Trump created an international folly. There and it's funny because we wouldn't have been in this position had Trump not done the tariffs and the attacks in Iran.
President Trump broke the hammer of Babylon.
He really did. He really did. Because now their resources are really constrained. Oh, we're going to do this. No, it's a lot more than that. See, they're thinking that all the other times that they could get away with just, the symbolic stuff, well, that throw them a bone and they'll be good. Those days are over. They know that those days are over.
Their Africans are holding their leaders accountable, so they just can't pay off the leaders and give them a spot on Epstein Island to take the country wherever they want to go.
Exactly. So just to kind of reiterate, why is this being discussed via the Birthright Citizenship ruling? Well, this was the tie-in to this Birthright Citizenship ruling. As I had explained earlier in this broadcast with the New York Times article, right? This is a global situation that they're trying to, and they reference this in the article, that 30 out of 200 countries do birthright citizenship. Now, what that also recognizes is that with the U.S. really on the downside of their relationship with the global community, you're now seeing where the global community is now headed. And this is part of getting on the program, which will affect the United States. My argument is this: because of things going on right now, it was a win, but it was also a loss. The loss was to have brought that out to begin with, because now you have inquiring minds like myself putting these pieces together. Oh, well, wait a second. They still have this. They still have that. This global order, they just said this international order is going to be impacted. Well, how do you impact an international order? People, the effect of people, the transportation of people, the removal of people, the arrival of people, the resources denied, resources provided, or even extended or optimized.
Brother Karras, let me ask you, didn't our president marry an immigrant and had a child born here in this country?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of sketchy. In his family, he got birthright citizen children. Would that be a strict definition? I'm just saying.
By definition, they'd all be affected had that gone through. That's why I had stated that a couple of weeks ago. I said,
really,
perhaps go ahead.
Perhaps with a declining population, they don't want the supply of YT women coming to this country and have children born over here that would add to their numbers. Perhaps that was one of the reasons they had to consider. It wasn't just dealing with melanated people or undesirable people, as they would say.
Well, I mean, think about it. This what's being offered, this is the argument. This is kind of the the straw man, the reverse straw man of sorts. The argument that you can see right here is, well, we don't have to do the dirty work. In terms of if you're looking at the U.S., you don't have to do the dirty work, because why? Because now you have a global response to everything, that you can just then ride the global bandwagon. Do you see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, it makes entirely sense. And as you said, it just occurred to us. If you're in, why I'd just be on FBAs, but this thing of this jingoism, this practice by some black people in this country, as high as you can go is the Supreme Court, which has been rigged in the same way as our whole political process. So why would you limit to that when we have a higher court? It's important that a higher international tribunal is enthroned above us that we can appeal to, higher than the Supreme Court. And we have the most high, the courts of heaven, that we can enter his courts, still higher than that. So it's got to be taken beyond, the land of our captivity. We just cannot keep appealing to the prison board and the parole commission for advances here in this country and think we're going to get a better situation in the prison yard after they moved the fence of the plantation. It's just, in fact, what little we had, they're trying to roll back. And the very fact that they can determine our rights and privileges here means you're not sovereign, you're a slave.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me finish up this article, and then we'll have some closing thoughts, because again, this heavily, thank you again, Brother Asaph, for sharing this with me, because this heavily does show the thought process. Because again, if they're able to even have this on the Guardian, this is from the Guardian's website. This isn't an African news website or anything else. Let me read this to you. But the international order that secured European political, economic, and legal dominance, keyword legal dominance, for centuries is steadily eroding. The U.S. is increasingly sidelining Europe, pushing it to the periphery of major global affairs, whether in the context of the Russian-Ukraine war, they state this, YouTube educational purposes, the genocide in Gaza, or the recent war of aggression carried out by the U.S. and Israel in Iran. Europe has struggled to make its influence felt in a world increasingly defined by raw power championed by Trump and Putin. And so now this is the defining moment. So the legalese. What is the legalese? Legalese is the power. It's the domination of power. As I referenced earlier, the Netflix series, The American Experiment, it's showing that. That's what it's showing. That's what it's looking at. You define the law based on your power. And you are subject to that law based on that power. Wait a second. You know what I'm saying? Venezuela had laws too. What happened to Maduro? Gone. Again, yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
I was maybe going to say that for my final comments, but that's a communist. These people are talking about, communist. That's communist. That's communist. Using these titles. They don't know what it means. They don't know what socialism is. They don't know what communism means. But the concept of power, Mao Zedong, the architect of communism in China, one of his famous quotes is, "All power comes from the mouth of a gun." So that's a communist concept that the president of the United States and this nation is practicing. That's communism. All power coming from the mouth of a gun. So this is communism. When they say I have power and I can do that, that's what that is.
Come on. Yeah, we're gonna have to definitely have some more discussions. This is a very rich discussion. All right, thank you, Minister Rick. I appreciate you being on. All right. Brother Asaph, final thoughts.
Right. We have, as the psalmist said in Psalms 142, verse 6, cried unto Yahuwah to deliver us from our enemies. And he's doing what he's promised in Jeremiah 31:11. He's redeeming Yaakov from the persons who are stronger than him. which is us in the diaspora. We're being redeemed at the moment. And whether you believe it or not, Hollywood Boulevard, that used to look quite rich, is looking like Pine Bluff. And the places in the city of London as well, Oxford Street, Tottenham Court Road, looks like Hollywood Boulevard as well, with the rough sleepers and tents and everything down there. This system is coming down, Brother Caris. I know you visited those places, but you'd be appalled to see what those places look like now over here. And the strong man is losing his grip day by day, week by week, and hour by hour. And we're almost out of here. And I'm really, really looking forward to our mouthpiece, Brother Yakoba, doing a teaching on an expository on what is happening now with where we are and where we're likely to be. Thank you very much for having me. This is a wonderful discussion, and having them has made me speak more fluidly, as you can hear. And thank you very much for having me on the panel. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brother Asaph. All right. Well, family, again, appreciate you all coming on out here, just listening on into, this is what's happening around the world. This is what is going on that is affecting each and every one of us. When people say, "Oh, you're just sitting here, you're good." You're good until you actually see how things are moving. I do want to address the South Africa situation tomorrow, because it just seemed like that to me is tribalism. I know Brother Asaph had spoken a little bit on that the other day, so I do want to address that for tomorrow. This is a great discussion. Again, we're going to start to see how things really I would say unravel, because now you're starting to see an international order being called out. And again, everybody is going to be trying to hold the moral high ground. I told you this. You are literally seeing the formula I was just explaining. Europe is getting ready to throw the U.S. under the bus. And it's funny, we just saw that in the article. I kid you not. Man, oh man. All right, family. I do have to get going. So with that, thank you again for your support. It does mean a lot. I truly appreciate it. I'm just a few dollars off from getting this battery replaced. I definitely appreciate your support. Definitely keep me up in prayers, because there are things that I'm doing in the background that are really getting ready to come together. So that is going to be impactful to the community at large. And when I say to the community at large, I really do mean it. And again, please don't disparage or discount our brothers and sisters over on the continent, because again, they are doing things that, they're putting their lives on the line to do stuff, to even have that conference. Why didn't Nigeria host it? Why didn't South Africa host it? You see what I'm saying? That's a big deal. That's a big segment. So, and again, there's also education that has to be done on both sides, because again, when you're in the echo chamber, right, and you actually are, face to face and understanding the history of things going on with your brothers and sisters, it builds. It builds. You only know what you know, or excuse me, in this case, you only know what the programming has given you. So that's part of our journey too. We literally have to be deprogrammed. I was going to talk about that with them, because they had the MK Ultra testimonies a couple of days, I think yesterday, matter of fact. So So it was interesting. It was interesting, but I do want to let you know this is what we're seeing. We're actually seeing another mind control program, but the mind control program isn't it's not focusing in on us. You can tell it is focusing in on them, and they're lost in it. We would have healed Babylon, but now she's in that mind control. The MK Ultra is doing its job. I don't know what to tell you. so so with that said, family, most high willing, I'll be back on tomorrow. And with that said, be blessed because you are blessed and highly favored in Yahuwah. And here's the thing: our struggles are only temporary. They truly are. But in everything you do, give thanksgiving. When you're not doing well, when things are looking terrible, give the Most High praise. That's what we're here for, or that's what we're here to do. That is our primary job, and He will make a way. He always does. Hallelujah. So with that said, family, shalom, salama, siemi, shalom, peace and blessings, Yasharel.